It was supposed to be just another summer evening in the quiet town of Bushy near Watford. Families were settling in, children were playing in gardens, and rain gently tapped against the rooftops. But beneath the calm surface of that July night in 2024, something sinister was already unfolding. Something that would soon dominate headlines and leave an entire nation in shock. A family loved by all. The Hunt family had always seemed picture perfect. John Hunt, a 61-year-old BBC Radio 5 Live commentator, was one of the most respected voices in British broadcasting. His commentary on horse racing was smooth, composed, and full of warmth, a voice that millions had come to know and trust. Off-air, John was known as a devoted husband and father. His wife, Carol, was a kind-hearted woman who volunteered for local charities and loved gardening. Their daughters, Louise and Hannah, were inseparable. Louise, 25, worked in marketing, while 28-year-old Hannah was a teacher known for her gentle nature and love for children. Neighbors described the Hunts as the kind of family everyone admired, polite, generous, and always smiling. But behind closed doors, something fragile had begun to fracture. The relationship that turned dark. Louise had recently ended a relationship with Kyle Clifford, a 26-year-old former soldier who had served briefly in the British Army. At first, their relationship had seemed typical. Dinners, photos on social media, messages full of love. But over time, Clifford's behavior shifted. Friends say he became possessive and short-tempered. He constantly checked her whereabouts, accused her of lying, and grew distant from everyone else. When Louise finally decided to end things, Clifford didn't take it well. He sent messages filled with regret, then anger. When those went unanswered, his tone turned threatening. According to friends, Louise confided that she was afraid of what he might do, but she didn't think he'd ever truly hurt her. No one could have imagined the violence that was about to follow. The night of July 9th, 2024, the rain had begun falling just after sunset. Soft at first, then heavier. Streetlights reflected on wet pavement, painting the neighborhood in dull gold. Inside the Hunt family's semi-detached home, the evening was peaceful. Carol had just finished preparing dinner. Hannah was visiting her parents for the night, and Louise was upstairs texting a friend. At 7:28 p.m., a dark-colored car pulled up outside the house. A man stepped out, hooded, carrying a long case. Neighbors would later say they barely noticed him through the rain. Moments later, shouting erupted. A scream cut through the air, followed by silence, then another. When the first responding officers arrived, the sight inside was devastating. Carol, Louise, and Hannah lay dead, each killed by a crossbow, a weapon both ancient and horrifyingly effective. There were signs of struggle, but the attack had been swift, calculated, and deeply personal. John Hunt, working that night at the BBC studios, received the news mid-broadcast. His colleagues described the moment as surreal. His face went pale, his words faltered, and then he was gone from the studio, rushing home to a world that would never be the same. The silent weapon. Investigators quickly determined that the murders were not random. The crossbow used was believed to be the same type favored by hunters, capable of piercing metal at close range. Unlike firearms, it required no license in the UK. It made no noise. It left no gunpowder residue. In many ways, it was the perfect weapon for someone who wanted to kill quietly. When police found signs of forced entry and quickly matched DNA from the scene, one name immediately rose to the top: Kyle Clifford. The connection to Louise, his military background, and the brutality of the attack pointed to one conclusion. This was a calculated act of revenge. The manhunt begins. As the sun rose over Hertfordshire the next morning, police launched one of the largest manhunts in recent memory. Clifford was on the run, armed and dangerous. Officers combed through neighborhoods, forests, and parks. Drones scanned the countryside. The sound of helicopters filled the air above Watford and Enfield. Residents were warned to stay indoors. Clifford's photo appeared on every major news outlet. A clean-cut young man with short brown hair and a distant stare that now chilled the nation. By noon, the search had intensified near Lavender Hill Cemetery in Enfield, an area Clifford was known to frequent. Witnesses reported seeing someone matching his description in nearby woodland. Dozens of armed officers closed in. After hours of tension, Police found him lying injured in a nearby field. Clifford had attempted to harm himself but was still alive. He was taken to the hospital under armed guard, ending a 20-hour manhunt that had left the country holding its breath. A nation in mourning. News of the murders spread rapidly. Social media flooded with tributes for the Hunt family. The BBC issued a heartbreaking statement of support for John Hunt, describing him as a beloved colleague enduring an unimaginable loss. Colleagues across the industry sent messages of condolence, calling it one of the darkest moments in the broadcaster's history. Outside the Hunt home, neighbors placed flowers and candles along the pavement. Cards with messages like, "We love you, John," and "Rest in peace, beautiful souls," lined the front gate. For days, the quiet streets of Bushy felt haunted by grief. Reporters described a heavy silence, a town struggling to comprehend how such horror could happen in such an ordinary place. The question everyone asked: why? That was the question haunting everyone, from detectives to neighbors to the millions who followed the story online. What could drive someone to murder not only their ex-partner, but her family as well? Police pieced together Clifford's final days. They discovered he had quit his job abruptly. His phone contained disturbing searches related to crossbow laws and lethal accuracy. Friends recalled seeing him distant, muttering about betrayal and humiliation. Psychologists later described his behavior as classic coercive control gone extreme, a dangerous mix of entitlement, rage, and obsession. When he lost control over Louise, he chose to destroy everything connected to her. The aftermath. As Clifford recovered under police watch, detectives continued to build their case. The evidence was overwhelming: fingerprints, surveillance footage, and the weapon itself. The community, however, was left grappling with deeper wounds. Parents began questioning the safety of their own families. Women shared stories of past relationships with controlling partners. Conversations about domestic abuse and mental health took center stage in the national dialogue, the Crossbow debate. The tragedy also reignited a political firestorm over the accessibility of crossbows in the UK. Unlike firearms, owning one requires no background check or registration. In the wrong hands, it becomes a silent, deadly weapon. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper addressed Parliament, promising an urgent review of the 1987 Crossbows Act. "No one should have such power to take lives so easily," she said. "This is not just about weapons, it's about protecting lives." The incident sparked petitions, advocacy campaigns, and public debates. People demanded stricter regulations, calling for licenses, age limits, and mandatory mental health checks for buyers. The grief of a father. For John Hunt, the days after the murders were a blur of heartbreak and disbelief. Those who knew him said he barely spoke. The voice that once filled radio waves with excitement and joy was now silent. At the family's memorial, John finally broke that silence. Standing before hundreds of mourners, he said softly, "They were my reason to live, my girls, my heart, my everything." His words brought tears to everyone present. The three white coffins, side by side, symbolized not only a family lost, but the innocence of a life built on love and shattered by violence, justice, and closure. When Kyle Clifford stood trial months later, the courtroom was packed. Prosecutors described a man consumed by resentment, who plotted every detail of the murders in cold blood. Messages recovered from his phone showed his hatred and obsession escalating in the weeks before the attack. The jury took less than 2 hours to find him guilty on all 3 counts of murder. The judge called it one of the most calculated acts of domestic terror in modern British history. Clifford was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But for John Hunt, there was no victory, only an aching void. "Justice doesn't bring them back," he told reporters outside the court. "It just ensures he can never hurt anyone else." Months later, a charity fund was launched in memory of Carol, Louise, and Hannah to support victims of domestic violence and raise awareness of coercive relationships. It quickly raised hundreds of thousands of pounds. Schools held assemblies discussing warning signs of abuse. Survivors came forward to share their stories, inspired by the Hunt's tragedy. Even in death, their memory sparked change. Their story became a beacon, a tragic reminder that love without respect can become deadly, and silence can cost lives. The home that fell silent. The Hunt home now stands empty, its windows dark and its garden overgrown. But every so often, fresh flowers appear by the front gate, tokens of remembrance from strangers who never knew them but were touched by their story. Neighbors say the air there still feels heavy, especially on rainy evenings. The echoes of that night linger like a shadow, reminding everyone that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from those once welcomed inside, a legacy of awareness. The Watford murders will forever be etched in Britain's memory, not just for their brutality, but for the conversations they ignited. Laws began to change, awareness began to spread, and countless lives were touched by one family's tragedy. John Hunt, though shattered, continues to honor his family's memory quietly. In every word he speaks, there's a message of love, warning, and resilience, a reminder that the cost of ignoring red flags can be catastrophic. This story is more than a crime. It's a warning, a testament to how quickly obsession can turn to violence, and how fragile peace can be when control replaces love. Out of the pain came purpose. Out of silence came awareness. And through the heartbreak of one family, others may yet be saved. If you were moved by this story, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Because awareness can save lives, and remembering their story ensures they'll never be forgotten.